Well, for more perspectives on the flood disaster that has ravaged many communities, let's speak with an environmental consultant, Dr. Chukwudi Njoku, who joins me live from Port Harcourt. Thank you for joining us on the news at 10 tonight. So already there are fears that the country could face food shortages and increase in the prices of food due to the floods that has destroyed farmlands in many parts of the country. But how do you think the government should handle this situation?
Thank you very much, Esther, and good evening. Thanks for having me on the show tonight. Yeah, so this is a very timely issue, and we cannot overemphasize the importance of bringing the problem to the front burner, like your platform is doing. While I have always advocated that everyone is a stakeholder in the flood problem, much more is required from the government and its institutions who are saddled with the responsibility of prevention, mitigation, preparedness, relief and recovery. There's so much the government would have to do in this particular flooding problem, but much more than the usual thing which we do every year that has to do with relief and recovery, like we have seen the government in different states, in Katsina, Anambra, Bayelsa, even in Imo, like we have just seen, sharing resources to people that have been affected by the flooding. I think because the flooding problem is a scientific problem, in fact, it's a geographic problem, then for that reason, it should be handled as a geographic problem, which it is. Now, early warning is one aspect that the government has to take seriously. The government has to make sure that people, especially people that live in flood risk zones, high and medium risk flood areas, should be prepared and should be aware that, okay, these floods will very likely come. Now, to provide context to what we're facing currently and to quantify what we're up to, a study I carried out in 2020 revealed that 22,654 square kilometers of Nigeria is exposed to high risk of flooding, and 44,923 square kilometers is exposed to medium risk of flooding. Now, that means there's a whole lot of work for the government to do, because this is a very large expanse of land with lots of people either living in these areas or farming in these areas. So the task is enormous for the government, and that is why the government has to sit up. Stakeholders also have to sit up and work together as well as with community people to see that the problem is nipped in the bud, and then we are not just trying to solve the problem after the flooding has occurred.
And aside from nipping this in the bud, how do you think vulnerable communities now can adapt to the changing climate, the extreme weather events we'll be experiencing from time now, which is greatly affecting their lives and livelihoods? And what kind of mitigation efforts do you think should be adopted in some of these states?
Okay, yes. So for communities, first of all, they must work closely with NIMET, because I know the Nigerian Meteorological Agency, they release the yearly flood outlook, and they release it a year before. Now, they have to get themselves familiar with these documents, in as much as NIMET itself have to take this information to the community people. Now, these people in the communities, especially the very large population of people who live on the floodplains, need to be very much informed about the flooding outlook. By so doing, they avoid carrying out farming activities in the floodplains. Now, these floodplains in Nigeria are quite rich in nutrients, and that's why you see lots of agricultural activities going on there. So, but if they are aware of the flooding outlook, then they know that, okay, there would very likely be flooding at a particular time of the year because extreme rainfall has been predicted. By so doing, they can plan their farming such that they are not taken unawares and their crops are not destroyed by the floods that will come. That may be difficult because it has to do, it will require a lot of coordination. It may also be difficult for community people to put up infrastructure that will reduce their exposure to flooding. That's why it is important that the government takes active role in seeing that the flooding issue is mitigated and reduced at community level. However, community people must be very much aware of what is going to come to them, especially when flooding has been predicted, when high rainfalls have been predicted, and this will definitely keep coming with the current dispensation of climate change.
All right, and that's a fine place to leave it. Dr. Chukwudi Njoku, appreciate your insights on the news at 10 tonight.
Thank you.